Hey Chris, how you doing?
How you doing, Nick?
I'm doing great, thanks. Hey, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. We're looking forward to this chat. You know, so everything okay?
Here. Yeah. Just rolling along.
Yeah.
2024, shot out of a cannon.
Well, we're almost 1/12 into it.
I know.
So
I know. It goes
yeah,
by fast.
yeah, it does. So hey, I wanted to start this chat by kind of like going through a little bit of like your own career journey.
Sure.
I think a lot of folks who kind of plug in and also come to own, they're always looking to see, oh my God, what were the decisions that, he or she made that brought them, to this level in their career. So,
Sure. I mean, yeah, I definitely, I would say it's more of a series of just lucky decisions and not really, I never really had a career map. I graduated college in 1993 with a degree in economics from the University of Connecticut. My mom taught computer science, so I had some growing up. There was a lot of that in my house. 1993 was not a great job market, so went back to school for computer science part time. And if I'm being frank, kind of talked my way into my first role at a company called National Reinsurance that was
mm,
hostily taken over by Gen Re while I was there my first week, and wound up grabbing a consulting job at a company called CUC International, and it was a help desk job. It was running around fixing printers and fixing computers and stuff that I always did as a kid. Didn't realize you could
yeah,
make a living out of it. Did that
mm,
for a few months and took a job at an EDI company called Mercator. At the time, it was called TSI, where I was
yeah,
on their support staff. So customers would call in, and I would help them troubleshoot issues with our software and our hardware. Did that for a couple of years, and then joined a company called Greenwich Technology Partners, which was a pretty well-known
mm,
um, uh, infrastructure consulting firm, and worked on a couple good projects, moving data centers for Starwood and doing some stuff for Chase around Citrix. And this was the late 90s, and was learning a lot of different technologies, getting a lot of certifications, and then decided I wanted to try my tryout management, and wound up getting a job at GE managing technology. And so
uh,
that's really what started where my career is now. So I worked at GE in different roles in different divisions for about 15 years, doing many different jobs. So, storage, compute, network security, and then more general leadership.
mm,
Really learned the GE leadership mantra, went through all the GE leadership classes, left GE in 2015, did a brief stint at JP Morgan Chase running their network, and then found a role here at Cigna, where I've been for the last, I think this is my ninth year.
mm,
And
yeah,
the role here has been really interesting. It's changed throughout the years, but generally speaking, I have everything from data center through cloud, which is really interesting because I get to see the transformation that we talk about a lot at ONUG,
mm,
from sort of traditional infrastructure to infrastructure as code to now, AI infrastructure, as we kind of mature our cloud journey and mature how we use technology to basically benefit the health and well-being of our customers, patients, and partners. And so it's really been an awesome journey. Along the way, I've met a lot of great leaders, met a lot of great technicians, and yeah, I mean, that's where I am today, and I enjoy it immensely. So
yeah. I tell you, there's so many great pedigree that came out of GE. Like so many really great people, even like, on our board, Regis Rogers and Shafiq Sheikh, and
yeah,
Chris
drum cool.
Drumgoole, so many really great folks came out of GE, and everyone is so professional. It must have been all those kind of management classes that everybody had to take over at GE, but they understand business and they understand kind of their roles, and they have really great interpersonal skills. They're very
Yeah,
respectful, and you really like being with them. It's a really great company that produced a lot of really great executives.
yeah, and it's doing well again. It's nice to see. I mean, we're all ex-GE, but we still pull for the company. We have a lot of blood, sweat, and tears went into helping build that company, and I think GE just did that. Intrinsically, the culture of GE just taught you that, to be fair, to be tough, to not make decisions based on your sort of personal insecurities, but to do what was best for the firm. The best piece of advice I ever got at GE that I still do to this day is that GE, your job was to work yourself out of a job. And by working yourself out of a job, you were always going to have a job at GE. And so I try to instill that in my engineering teams to think like that when they're solving problems. If you're trying to solve problems and thinking about its impact to your job, you're not going to make the best decision for the firm. But if you're always trying to do something that's innovative, that makes it so that you can take your intelligence and work on a bigger problem, the firm will always benefit. So I took that away from GE, and I try to live that every day.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. That's a great, those are great nuggets that we all pick up, along the way that kind of really influence how we kind of view the world and kind of guides us. It's interesting, actually, Chris, I think the way that we kind of got connected, kind of really kind of a circuitous, kind of way, was a gentleman named Steve, I think, Bowles. So Steve ran, he had all the clean energy business at GE, and I got to know Steve, over the years. And then Steve, said, okay, well, what are you doing with this thing called ONUG? And so I told him, he goes, why don't we get GE involved? And so he connected me with Chris Dremgoole. And that's how all of a sudden the relationship with GE really started and fostered, and it's been actually a really great one, as well. So, and Bob Basaki, as well.
Yeah. That's the cool thing. You have all these GE guys that are, Bob's at Microland, and Regis is doing a startup now, and Shafiq's, he's moved on. And so that we always call it like the GE network kind of. If you get in with GE and you wait 3 years, people are going to move around. And I just like it because, first of all, when I go to the ONUG conferences, it's like a little bit of a reunion. I bumped into a guy that worked for me who's at Synchrony now. And so it's always like that little opportunity for ex-GE folks to get together. But then, the power of ONUG has always been the diversity in the community. And as a GE, people go out and they venture into different companies, and they then bring those companies and introduce them to ONUG. It just creates a better set of ideas and diverse opinions that ultimately benefits all the members and benefits the industry. So I definitely enjoyed my time there.
Yeah, awesome. Well, your contributions have been huge, on the leadership team, for a long period of time. So, not only do I thank you, but the whole community, thanks you. And the networking part of ONUG is pretty amazing, I have to say, for the reasons that you just mentioned. So, anyway, so that's, it's so funny because even I started my career at Digital Equipment Corporation, and DEC, like GE, has a great pedigree. It's like so many people left there to go do different things, and it is wonderful to kind of meet them and and hook up and talk to them. I don't have something like an ONUG that that pedigree kind of comes to. So I'm happy that's happening. When we meet twice a year. Yeah. So all right. So I want to actually so something you and I have talked about, but. I'd like to kind of bring into this. And we both have kind of a love for music and playing music, as well. I'm sure you're a lot better at it than I am, but
I don't know about
so I'm sure. I am always relegated to the basement to play. Go downstairs is what I always hear, But so how did your music journey start? Like, when did it start, and what do you do today?
Oh, I started young. I mean, my father was a cool cat. Like, he was a big Miles Davis fan, and he was a little bit of a took his 20s to really enjoy life. And, there's stories of him taking a semester off from college to follow Miles Davis around the Eastern Seaboard, and definitely a big music aficionado. Never learned to play an instrument, had a really nice voice for singing, very artistic too, my father. And so when we were kids, I didn't grow up, my parents were teachers, so I grew up in a relatively lower middle class house. But one thing my parents were very adamant about was that me and my siblings all play an instrument. So when I was in 5th grade, I chose trumpet, and my father was a teacher at Naugatuck High School, and the trumpet, the band leader there was a guy named Robert Filippelli, and he'd send me up for private lessons with him. And I really took to trumpet. got really into it. And I think I was a 7th or 8th grade, and I had an uncle come visit from California, and he gave me an old Yamaha nylon string guitar. He
Mm.
had it, and I remember the pick he gave me was actually the fastener for a loaf of bread, the little plastic tab. So it wasn't even
Yeah.
a real pick. And I started kind of messing around that. I knew how to read music a little bit, and this is back before the internet. So I'd go buy a magazine, or I got a book from the library, and really took to guitar playing. And throughout high school, I pretty much played trumpet in the band, but then guitar in a lot of bands. Like, I was in a
Uh,
bunch of different bands that, with my friends, and started taking lessons from friends of mine. Did that all the way through college, played in a couple bands in college, was up at UConn and played out at bars with a friend of mine. And usually we'd have to wind up paying money at the end of the night because we drink more than we made. And then never really, when I graduated college, I never really stopped playing. I've always, like, there's a guitar right behind me. There's always a guitar near me. And
yeah.
I'm notorious on conference calls. People see me holding a ukulele when I'm on mute, or a guitar. I'm always fiddling away. And,
Yeah.
it's just something that's part of my life. I have 3 sons. They all play guitar. They all play a band instrument. And we have a band here at Cigna that we play the picnics and some of the events. And, we talked about this. In IT, there's a huge percentage of musicians. So I
Yeah.
love that. I walk out of here and I'm like, hey, do we have a drummer? And 10 hands go up, because you can never find a drummer, right? Bass players, we
Yeah.
got them all. So we've talked about doing a jam band at Onug. So it's something that's important to me. It's a way I distress. It helps me kind of let the day go. And I still get excited playing a Van Halen tune on guitar. I've not gotten old. So
Yeah.
I just really enjoy it. So yeah, that's
How awesome is that? Yeah, no, I love
yeah.
that. It's like I'm so envious of, like, folks like you that started really early. Like I played saxophone in middle school, and I think the good experience about that was that it did teach me how to read music. But then I stopped, and it wasn't until, like, my 50s I picked up a guitar, and started playing. And so I try to play every night, but it's and I got into an ensemble, but I don't have anywhere near that kind of depth of experience if you have of playing with others and for a long period of time. So when I do, it's a lot of fun. I have such a great time, with it. It utilizes a different part of your brain,
Yeah.
which I really love, about music. Just understanding music theory and then trying to figure out something that you're hearing in your head and how do you express that, is actually a great high, as well.
Oh yeah.
I just wish I had started it and done it, like, when I was 16, 17, years old. But hey, you can't look back. At least I'm having fun now with it.
When you're playing an instrument, you're kind of at the crossroads of logic and math and creativity, and that's what's cool about it. And
Yeah.
there's all kinds of science around, people that learn how to read music. Does it impact their creativity versus someone like a Jimi Hendrix, who might be considered one of the most innovative guitar players ever, that didn't read music, and
Mm.
just he wasn't bound by music theory, and he did some stuff that no one ever heard before. But I love exploring it. We're always learners, and the cool thing is what you said is it's never too late.
Mm.
I'm about to embark on taking piano lessons. My son, who just started at UConn, was taking piano lessons. He gave up his slot, and I'm like, well, I'll jump in and take your slot for piano lessons. I was like, it's never too late to learn a new instrument, and so we're gonna see how it goes.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's actually, I would even say it's important. I think for mental health, it's like to learn kind of an art form, especially as you're getting older, it's like, it's not getting ready for retirement, but it's also, you tend to have a little bit more time when you're a little bit older, because you're much more efficient at work because you've been doing it for so long. So you have the extra time, utilize it to kind of, utilize a part of your brain that maybe you haven't used before.
I like how you said that, efficient at work. For me, it's when I have a really boring meeting, I can think about songs in my head and decide, hey, can I learn that song? Is that where's that chord structure on Circle of Fifths? And then hopefully nobody asks me a question about whatever they're talking about in the meeting. But I get
know.
it.
It's so funny. I have a good friend who is a really accomplished guitar player. And he never studied music theory, and just he's one of those persons that kind of just like played. So I'm like, all right. So his name is Vic. So I'm like, Vic, I'm kind of like, I'm learning kind of the major pentatonic scale. He goes, the what? I said, major pentatonic scale. He goes, what's that? I'm like, oh my God.
You show it to him and he knows it inside and out.
Yeah, he knows it inside and out.
Yeah.
He'll play it, his like eyes closed, upside down, it's like whatever. But like, yeah, he just, never kind of learned, all the different keys, all the different modalities like within the keys, and all that stuff, So, but he is a fantastic guitar player, really great. So I love what you said as well, and I'm going to use that for kind of transition. I kind of view there is a similarity around math that I find with music, and I think people have divergent views on that. But what I find is that I kind of remember like taking kind of like both algebra and then into calculus classes. And in calculus, you really don't understand algebra until you take calculus, because you're forced to do so much algebra within calculus. And then when I'm playing guitar, I might learn a certain chord sequence, within a certain key. And when I'm first learning it, it's like, okay, that's a little bit, weird, and then I start getting a little bit better. And then, okay, I get to a place where I'm comfortable with it. And then I may come back to it, like a while, like, 6 months ago, and I've been playing other things, and those other things built upon it. And now it's a lot easier to play. And so it's like those signatures and those, I guess signatures is really the best term, just like in math, there's so many different signatures, and you kind of see something, you just, oh, that's that operation, and let me go off and do this. So
I think it's the inquisitive nature of the musician too. So, when I started out, I would, play a 3-chord song, and you just were happy because it sounded like the song that you were trying to learn, right? If it was a Who song or whatever, you're like, wow, this sounds like Baba O'Reilly. This is so cool. And then, what makes you good at IT and math, what makes you good at music, is then you're like, well, what are those chords? What are the triads? What are the notes in those chords? And then you start, so one day you sit down, you get a piece of paper and you write them out, and they go, what are all the scales that encompass those notes? And then you're like, oh, well, I could play this scale over it and it sounds cool. And over this chord, I can make this little change. And next thing you know, you're like, I'm playing a solo that sounds really cool over Bob O'Reilly. And Pete Townsend wasn't a big soloist. That wasn't his thing. And then you're like, well, if I can do that over Bob O'Reilly, can I do it over a harder song? And so I feel like that inquisitive nature, and I've always said, and this is not 100%, but IT people tend to be introverted. It's not a very extroverted science, right? Technology. And so these are people, if you're an introvert, you tend to spend more time focusing on learning something because you're not necessarily out and about. I mean, I spent high school plenty of Friday nights at home learning songs like guitar and not out at dances and stuff like that. And so that's just the way the brain works. And you want to get more of a deep knowledge, kind of like, having to take calculus to understand algebra. And so I like that. That's why I like working in IT, because it's a bunch of people that aren't just happy with, if I go, hey, just do it this way, they're going to go, no. Why am I doing it that way? And they're going to go home and they're going to noodle on it and they're going to think about it. And that's why we don't really call it work, right? A lot of us that grew up in networking, we didn't feel like it was work when we were on calls at 10 o'clock at night trying to figure out, why we had latency between our site and the internet. It was fun for us because we wanted to understand it, and then we wanted to figure out how to make it better. And so if you love doing it, it's not a job. And so I think all those sort of, personality traits and skill sets, when they kind of work together well, there's work-life balance is inherent because you're doing what you love to do. And I love being around people like that. I love being challenged. I love when people say, Chris, why are you thinking that way? And they ask me the 5 whys, we used to call it GE, and you get your opinion changed, or they learn something, or you learn something. And I feel that way about music when I'm sitting next to another musician watching them play, and just a simple song, they'll fret a chord different. I'm like, why are you doing that? Well, it's easy to move my pinky from here to here. And I was like, never thought of it. Fantastic. So I love that stuff. But
I'm with you, on that. And let's kind of take that and kind of stretch that idea a little bit. So before, like you were talking about, data center and also cloud, and kind of in the midst of transformation. So on our industry side, so we at our last board meeting, we were talking about how things got so complex within many of our operations, and it wasn't just you. It was like a lot of people were kind of chiming in on that. So could you provide maybe a little bit of color, to that? And so what's driven up the complexity since really the pandemic? So,
Yeah.
what are some of the
Sure.
drivers for that complexity?
I think so. I think, listen, I think complexity's been around for a long time. I have a speech I give to like when we have something called Tech DP. So it's college grads that come and they rotate through different technical departments for a few years, and they kind of get a lot of exposure to a lot of different capabilities in an IT department the size of Cigna, and then they come off program and they kind of get their career started in. Um, I've made a living because of complexity in IT, right?
Hmm.
So you think about, you go back to the 90s, right? We'll just talk about internet forward. The
Yeah.
internet created complexity. Applications started to get complex. They came off the mainframe. The cycle to which you had to enhance your capabilities in application got really short because of the internet, this whole internet boom, and this whole what do they call it, B2B, and internet marketplace. And so when applications were on the mainframe, and largely there's still a bunch on there, there was a whole culture and tradition as to how they were maintained. They sat on a mainframe. There was a set of parameters they had to work within. Once we got to client server and the internet, the speed of innovation, the different languages people programmed in, it got very complex very quickly. And then all of a sudden, the infrastructure team had to come up with innovative ways to keep these applications up, to keep them resilient, to improve issues when we're having latency. So you have these things like load balancers, firewalls to protect them, and we know how complicated firewalls can get.
Yeah.
All the different virtualization, right, for the desktop because of the latency, because of data gravity issues. The MPLS network came along and created more issues with high applications. Remember, applications used to sit in the data center that was in your building, so you had 10 megabit LAN speed was crazy fast. You're never going to need more than that. And so all these different things kind of happen, and IT got complicated. Then you get to the pandemic, totally takes corporate sort of culture and tips it on his ear. Everybody runs home. Now you
Yeah.
have to create all these same capabilities. Every house is like a business site. You've got all this need to accelerate because the market is getting faster and faster. And you look at healthcare, where I am, is so dynamic. You've got, cloud becoming viable, right? So more and more workloads are moving to cloud. You have things like infrastructure as code. So now you have development pipelines, and you have to be able to automate your code deployment through these pipelines. And, we're talking about companies that have a lot of legacy application development and technologies that now you're trying to expedite through this sort of new world order around speed to market, mean time to innocence in terms of what's breaking the application, how you create better data and better insights from the infrastructure and the applications to make sure that you can iterate on their ability to serve your customers as best as they possibly can. And we've gotten to this point now where we're looking to capabilities in the artificial intelligence market, to automation, to actually kind of replace what we do, which is we're very reactive. I mean, I know we've done a lot to make it more proactive, but we're still, as an IT industry, reactive to issues. Now, we've gotten very good at, reducing the time to find the issue. We've gotten very good at innovating solutions to make sure the issue doesn't happen again. But the complexity still drives a lot of that reactive nature. And I say where we are now, and I think where you're going to go with this, we're on the precipice of, well, how do we allow the data and intelligence to start making some of those decisions for us to actually even iterate on that speed. And in some case, bring down the complexity level. So what we're doing at Cigna is we're obviously application rationalization. We're trying to look at things like firewalls, like port and IP firewalls. Do they really serve a purpose anymore? Do we have, where are they? Where do they sit? What's the administrative overhead of all this sort of, I used to call it infrastructure middleware? How do we simplify this? How do we take advantage of capabilities that exist in, the public cloud providers where they can do that, better, faster, cheaper, easier? How do we, really put a lot of emphasis in cloud native development and taking advantage of all the things we've done in the infrastructure community to create resiliency, to create security, and develop it directly into the application versus layering it on a legacy application, which is how we've done it for many years. And so it's a really, really fun time, exciting time to be in this industry. I tell people it's like 1993. We have AI. We know it's going to do amazing things. We don't know the jobs it's going to create. We don't know the impact it's going to have to our firms, to our industries, but it's going to be exciting. It's going to open
Yeah.
all kinds of doors. It's just how do we get going, and how do we do it in a way that we can, that we don't do the proverbial open the front door and let the bad guys in, because they have all these capabilities too.
Yeah,
So,
well, for sure, it's kind of equal opportunity with the tools, right?
sure.
I love what you said. It's like really the complexity drove and drives the interrupt nature, of kind of the profession, right? And I think that, and complexity has always been there. Complexity inflation has always been there,
Sure.
as well. It seems like it's just at a different level because of the sprawl that was created during the pandemic. But I love, like, really so the way that you're thinking about simplification there, I'm kind of going to put into two different buckets. One is that, okay, well, what can we do in the infrastructure to simplify, eliminate things that we really may not even need anymore? How do we leverage, other tools like cloud, to take over some of those things that we were once doing inside? So there's kind of a whole optimization thinking through the existing infrastructure. And then there's the AI piece. And the AI piece is really interesting. And I think something you said, I think this is what you were getting at there. If it's not, just let me know. And that is, we spend a lot of time tinkering and tooling with the infrastructure to support applications. And the question is that, can the infrastructure start doing that, take that toil over with a range of AI tools, so that an application, for just to kind of conjure up a mental model, could there be like an AI orchestrator, and that could be maybe a federated group of AI algorithms running all throughout the infrastructure, but say there's an AI orchestrator that works on behalf of an application, and then so that orchestrator then the application needs connectivity to a certain place. You leverage that infrastructure, but instead of maybe just best effort, to get from point A to point B, it's now looking at security posture. It's looking at latencies and various different links. It's looking at the user experience, and how does it now deliver on that user experience, and drawing upon written policy, for that. So is now the infrastructure, are we basically moving from an infrastructure environment where we were connecting things together, physically connecting things together, into an environment where it's not about just providing connectivity for all intents and purposes? We have that, but maybe it's really all about now utilizing that infrastructure to deliver that service to that application, and automated service. So I don't know, is that when you were...
Yeah, no, I definitely think, I mean, when I think about this, right, I think about all the tools and all the data that all the tools we use to pull all the data we have from both our applications and our infrastructures. And today, the way we're set up is we have different organizations that pull different data or like data, but then use their own set of tools to analyze that data and make decisions on how to get that application or that whatever to perform better. There's a few flaws in that. One is, we're large organizations, people are going 100 miles an hour, and they don't necessarily stop to talk to each other. So you'll have potentially the power of the diverse teams looking at that data and agreeing on an insight doesn't happen as regularly or as efficiently as it could happen. The second thing is that we really don't understand our applications. I'm saying this in the greater sense of technology, in that, to your point, the sprawl. These applications are no longer housed to your data center, and every element or tile that it accesses to do something. Every time you have an issue, you learn something different about the applications. And I'm not saying people are asleep at the wheel. It's just there's so many different supportive applications that support an application. It's beyond the ability for one person to remember everything. And so you have to kind of, you follow the packet. Like, why is this application going out to this service? You follow the packet, and then someone goes, oh yeah, we're doing that because we've got this one particular thing. We need to do this thing. And oh yeah, we forgot it. No, boom. That is a lot of how we use data and insights when we're in the heat of an issue, right?
Yeah.
The third thing is that we change so fast now the way applications change and the way we add capabilities is speed, that if you actually had to slow down and manually go in and tool these applications, you would slow the business down from hitting its objectives, because our ability to manually get involved is slowing down the speed at which these capabilities need to be developed and deployed. And so you're always kind of playing catch up. And that's kind of been going on for years, if we're being honest, right? And so where I like AI is that it's kind of that, think about it as that ability to take all this data, develop insights from that data. Now, the data has to be accurate. That's one thing that we've always struggled with, right? CMDB accuracy has always been something we've struggled with. I feel like AI is going to, help us both, make sure the data is accurate, so that sort of that audit capability to know it's accurate, but then the insights it's going to glean from it, it's going to be able to dynamically make the change or fix the issue or choose the right path or choose the right security firewall that has to go up for that particular insight at that given moment. And it's going to work at the speed of light, right? And so I envision a world where, today we're having latency and our tools might find it, but a bunch of people get on the call and they go, well, do we fail from, I'm just making up names, I'm not saying any of these are suppliers, but do we fail from Verizon to Lumen? And will that solve the problem? And then we'll fail. And if the problem goes away, boom, we did it. Then we'll do a PIR, find out what really happened with it, and try to go back and make sure it never happens again. That's sort of a typical issue you'd see in corporate IT. Tomorrow, to your point, the sort of the digital ops will do that for us. We'll get a log, or we'll get some sort of a spit out that says it did that today, and the reasons why it did it. I think those reasons will enlighten us, and it can do it at the speed of light, meaning that today we're not going to fail over one application to a different path unless there's really an impactful thing going on that's impacting our customers. And tomorrow it'll do it, and it'll bring it back when it's better, and it'll just make the customer experience better, meaning that they won't maybe get a 502 error 1 out of every 100 times, or they won't feel like, oh, the app seems a little laggy today. It's working, but it's a little laggy. Tomorrow, that all goes away, because the ability for it to orchestrate, to your point, all these quick improvements, both from a performance perspective, but also from a security perspective, it's going to do two things. It's going to make everybody's lives easier, right? Because that's a lot of work today for a lot of smart people that we really want focused on driving better innovations on our business side. And the second thing is it's going to improve our security posture, because I kind of feel like we're quickly getting to a point where if you have to get a bunch of people on a call to figure out what's going on, you might be a little late to the game.
That's time. Yeah.
So that's kind of how I'm viewing it in the capabilities. And I think we've had the data's been there for a long time. It's the ability to take that data and the confidence to let the insights that come from that data dynamically change something in our environment, and then you make sure we log it and that we have all the right auditing and accounting for it. But I think we're quickly coming on that. The cloud providers do it today to a certain extent, so it's coming.
It's interesting too. I wonder, so on the human side, of this, there's the element of trust, and how long will it take to trust? Well, first it's got to be developed, right? And so where the industry is quickly kind of moving to kind of enable these tools. So let's assume that the tools are here, then how long does it take to trust? I remember, you probably remember this too, Cisco probably, I don't know, when was this? In the 2005, 2010 timeframe, they introduced something, what was it called? Was it media access control? I know that stands for Mac. But say again. I'm sorry.
That was Mac. Yeah, that's you're talking. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I'm not going to remember.
Yeah. So there would be some anomalistic signature behavior, and then they would basically take those packets and that IP address, and then they would delegate it towards a protected VLAN, so that you can remediate and find out what's going on there. A lot of folks didn't trust it. It wasn't anything wrong with the technology, but they were just just didn't want to trust the robot to kind of make that decision. So I'm wondering,
because the robot was just doing that based on one specific data insight it was gleaning from that Cisco log. Look at IPS; it's a perfect example. Nobody ever wanted to put it in prevent mode, right? They always want to just have it log and set an alert, and someone goes, is this real? Because you're afraid if you said block that signature and it was a false positive, you're going to break an application. So I know where you're going with this, because we've had this capability to have it dynamically turn off. I think the difference now is it's looking at all data and insights, meaning that not only can it, I envision this, and listen, I'm a little wacky. I watch a lot of sci-fi movies, but this world where,
So
this potential capability will look at a much broader set of data and insights, make a decision. It will be able to make that change, potentially even in a non-prod environment, to see the impact of that change and then deploy it to prod, knowing that it's going to do what it's expected to do. The application is not going to be impacted. There's not going to be any outages. You're not opening up a potential security gap in doing it. Like that now it's going to take time to trust that, right? I mean, there's a lot of trust in that. And what will make us trust it? Seeing it happen and doing things that we would have never thought to do, that actually the outcome is better than what we would have done using our traditional tool sets.
Yeah,
So
outcome. You're absolutely right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Outcome will build trust.
Point now. Yeah. I think we're at that point now. I think before those were good capabilities, and different companies, depending on what industries you're in, what kind of data you're talking about, would trust them differently. But I think we're on the precipice of the data's better, the logic is better, the intelligence is better, and it's going to make better decisions. I was at a conference, unrelated, but it's kind of the same message. I was at a conference. It was Cisco. It was a Cisco, Cisco Live, around the same time you were talking about, used to have an executive small conference inside Cisco Live. They bring like 40 executives from larger companies. And I had the benefit of going there when I was working at GE. And Peter Diamandis, so he's out there. He's a big influencer. He was the guest speaker at this one. And he was talking about computers driving surgical vehicles to perform surgery on people. So back then, 15, 20 years ago, this was kind of a future thing. And I remember he said something, I don't remember anything about his speech other than he was really charming. He was a medical doctor, he was a PhD, and his pedigree was ridiculous. I remember that. And then I remember this one statement. There'll be a time in the near future where you will request the computer to do the surgery, not the surgeon. You will want the computer to perform surgery on you. Now, luckily, I have not had to have any surgery yet, but I assume I will at some point. And that has always resonated in my head. Well, I think it's a very same comparison to, at some point in the near future, your technology leaders, your business leaders will say, let the AI insight decide how we remediate this issue. We trust that more than a bunch of smart people on an outage call trying stuff and seeing what works. I do believe we're going to get to that point. So
I'm with you on that. I think there's so much, like, I think we're tired of the toil, that it takes to kind of constantly tweak and keep that infrastructure up and running. And it kind of goes back into the simplification, theme that we talked about before, about how do you mitigate complexity. This is a great way. It's a great new tool. We hope to mitigate that complexity. And I want to tie one other thing that you said into this as well, and that is GE. One of the things that the management school taught you is that you should be always constantly working yourself out of a job. So now, I was talking to Gene Sun yesterday, and Gene had this really great quote, and he said, to my staff, I don't tell them AI is not going to take your job. What's going to take your job are people with AI skills. So it's not the AI, is that you have really got to get up to speed, and understand how to utilize, this new technology, and actually bring that power to bear in everything that you do. So that was
similar to cloud, right? Cloud 5 years ago, everybody's like, cloud's going to replace my job. No.
Oh yeah.
Right? Cloud doesn't replace your job, but you had to learn about cloud. Bill Gates said something I read in the paper last week. He was talking about AI. He's a little bit biased. He's still the largest shareholder at Microsoft, the most valuable company in the world, but he's very bullish on AI, like most of these, technologists are. And he said, we don't even know the jobs AI will create. I kind of read it. I was like, oh, it's a good little blurb, but what does he mean? But then I was thinking about, I started my career in 1993. I started at the beginning of the internet boom. And if you asked me in 1993, that we would be where we are with the dependence on the internet. If the internet were to go down, I know it's like imagine if the internet just went dark for an hour.
Yeah.
The world's economy would crash. I mean, everything we do in life is somehow tied to the internet now. And then on top of that, the jobs it's created. Think of all the jobs that we never even heard of or thought about in the early 90s that exist today, the careers that the internet created. This is no different. I think to sit there and if you're worried about your specific job today and AI and you want to bury your head in the sand or you want to try to keep it at bay because of that, you should embrace it. Because all it's going to do is, A, you're going to get opportunity to learn something new, which is we're in technology because we like learning. But two is you're going to a whole bunch of capabilities and new interesting things to do in life are going to come out of this. And so why wouldn't you want to do that? We call it future-proofing your career, right? And so you should be excited about this. I've yet to see a technology. We've been doing this a long time, Nick, that shrinks the IT org. The IT orgs now are bigger than they've ever. In fact, the IT org is almost becoming ethereal because most people coming into the workforce now have better foundational IT skills than a lot of people that graduated with IT degrees 30 years ago. And so the playing field, millennials understand the internet. They're internet natives. They do things on the internet that I can't even imagine doing. So I would say the table stakes in terms of technologists is that everybody understands technology better and they depend upon it in their lives. I have a robot litter box. I wouldn't even be able to scoop a litter box. I don't even have a litter scoop at this point. Like my cat litter box runs off my phone. If my phone crashes, I can't make a cup of coffee in the morning. Like it's gotten to the point where everything we do is connected. And so you think about the ability to learn and the new roles. This is not a time to worry about how it affects you and your career. It's a time to embrace it and learn new things. And so I agree with Gene 100%. It's not, no one's job's ever been replaced by a technology, right? In mass. It's about using these technologies to be able to solve problems, I like your word toil. So you're not toiling at things where you could be using then your skills to do something even more exciting that can have a better impact to either your company, your industry, or just society in general. So I hope people embrace this. I think
so. I think the best engineers are lazy, meaning that they want automation, to do the stuff that they don't want to do anymore. And I think that kind of mindset is going to suit them really, really well in this new era, that we're moving in.
That's why we scripted everything in the 90s on network, right? Nobody wanted to go hit every switch just to change one parameter. We scripted everything. I agree.
For sure. Yeah. And I think to kind of amplify what you're saying about kind of like, there's always like, there was a kind of a mantra that, AI is first going to take your jobs and then it's going to kill us. But I think,
loosely the plot for the Terminator.
Yeah, I know. But I think, as I resonate with something you were just saying. So like in the mid 90s, it was actually a little bit before that, but really started hitting its stride kind of in the late 80s, early 90s. And that is the introduction of bridging and also routing. And the key thing with that is both spanning tree and also with what became TCP/IP. It was really kind of the computing industry's first implementation of machine learning. And Dijkstra, which creates the shortest path, is really an AI algorithm, And so once those came in, I remember at that time, people were just saying, well, this is going to be all automated and there won't be any jobs there, right? And look at us now, look how what the shortage is of both network engineers and also security engineers. So I'm totally with you on that. I don't think there's anything really to worry, if people are going to be worried about this. I think it's really more of an excitement, area. We're entering into this golden era where you can consume innovation a lot more. You can get rid of the toil that we don't like to deal with, anyway, and be able to accelerate business outcomes for the corporations that we work for. That's my view, I think, on really where we're kind of going with this whole AI piece, and
the security part is huge, right? Like I don't think we can gloss over it because to your point, nation states, just people that want to, just take advantage of honest companies for their own personal gain. They have access to all the same tools and data. And so I think we're upping the ante. And I think you're right. The industry needs to quickly figure out how to help drive up the expertise in the security capabilities we're going to need to deploy and the professionals that are going to need to do it quickly, because things like quantum are coming around the corner, and all these different capabilities are going to come together with generative AI and quantum and cloud. And there's unfortunately, it's a fact of life. We have to protect our company from those that want to do it harm, or those that just want to take advantage of it for financial gain. And so I do think, to your point, network engineers, people that have a strong foundation in these sciences, security engineering, they need to, this is their sort of golden age, but we also need to figure out how to attract more talented people, because we're going to need more, right?
Yeah.
This is speed of light, and it's happening faster. I think, listen, 3 onugs ago, how many times do you think we said generative AI 3 onugs ago?
Say that again?
How many times we actually said the word generative AI 3 onugs ago?
Oh, yeah.
2 onugs ago, all the people talk about a generative AI.
Yeah, very.
Yeah. So,
very little. And actually, in this ONUG coming up, it's the AI networking summit at ONUG. It's like,
I think if you just look at the ONUG, just go back into the onug.net and look at the last 3 ONUGs, you're going to see how quickly, go through all our ONUGs and give me another capability that came up this fast and now has become the headliner, right? It's above Schwarzenegger on the Terminator poster. It's the biggest name on there now. Like, I don't mean that in a negative way, but it's got top billing now. And so this is how quickly this is happening. And so this is why, we've got to be diligent, and we've got to really make sure that we're training people properly for this. So crazy.
I'll tell you, Chris, it's like it was Andy Brown and Phil T that gave that keynote in fall in New York, that kind of like, I think, lit the fire underneath everyone's bum about this, and they've been really good. And so I started wrapping my mind around this right after that, so it was like early November, and it wasn't that long that when we were starting to kind of like think through the design, of the program, we realized every single topic has an AI component now to it. It's not a track; it is systemic all across everything that has anything to do with infrastructure. Now, and and the supplier community, it's like like I think what Juniper announced like yesterday, like their kind of AI native networking program. Ericsson, I think, is about to announce. Obviously Cisco bought Splunk, and there's a big AI play in that area. So HP and Juniper, that kind of merger happening is really driven by this.
Because Aruba has a big play in it. They're talking. I mean, I don't think if you're in the infrastructure space, if you don't have a strategy around AI, that you're long for the race here. So I think everybody's in a once again, I think the data's been there, right? I mean, we've been very good at collecting data. Look at the success of Splunk, right? Now it's how do you turn that data into split-second insights and changes that have a benefit, both performance, security, resiliency, whatever you want to talk about. It's that, to your point, doing that stuff at the speed of business, the speed of which we have to do it to be both secure and to be successful, is kind of the exciting twist that we're seeing come to fruition now. So I'm pretty stoked.
Yeah, I'm excited about it too. And it's like, what I want to kind of see, like all the new AI tools, and how do we use them? How do we expose the community, to them, and really be kind of an epicenter in the industry for the path forward around this. How do people get skilled up? What works, what doesn't work? How to get prepared? How do you consume? How do you get ready to kind of do AI stuff? I'm pumped up. I'm excited about the journey that we've been on, and actually, I think the accelerated journey that we're now find ourselves into. So great to have you.
Thanks, Nick.
I think that's a good place to stop, don't you think?
Works for me. It was fun.
Okay.
Good conversation.
Awesome, Chris. Hey, Chris, thanks so much. It was so great to chat with you. And
see you in Texas in May.
See you Texas in May.
Right?
For sure. All right. Thanks,
Take
Chris.
it easy. Yep. Bye.
Okay.